Hi. We're going to look at chapter 28 of the Tao Te Ching today. I just want to give you all a chance to get used to the light that's coming through the window because I can't seem to get out of it. So we're going to look at chapter 28. I'm going to read chapter 28 from the Tao Te Ching that I translated, and I had named this particular chapter grace, and we'll talk about why. I had to pick a word is the answer, but we'll talk about why. Here we go. Recognize its power. Remain receptive. And like a creek, nourish the world humbly. If you serve the world like a creek, grace will never leave you, and you will return to the nature of a baby. Recognize its purity. Embrace its mystery and serve as a model for the world. If you serve as a model for the world, grace will always guide you, and you will return to equanimity. Recognize its glory. Abide meekly, and like a valley, serve the world from emptiness. If you serve the world like a valley, grace will always be sufficient, and you will return to simplicity. Simplicity disrupts the conventional ways. Therefore, it serves as a tool. The sage makes simplicity the standard, and in this way becomes an enduring leader. Thus, the greater ways remain undiluted. So we're going to go through and look at this. I'm going to be using both sides, the simple word for word, which is what I saw as the direct translation from the Chinese characters, and then how I put that into modern English, which always involves some interpretation. So we'll start at the beginning, of course. I'm going to start on the left side, which is the simple word for word translation. And I'm going to read probably a line at a time, but I may occasionally break that rule. We'll see. We'll see what I do as I go forward. How's that? So, simple word for word. Know its male. Observe the rights of its female. And in fact, if we just glance down at the first line of the first three paragraphs, we'll notice it's know its something, observe the rights of its something, right? So one is like be aware of. And then the other one seems to be telling us how to act as we're aware of what it was ever in the first place. So here it's know its male, observe the rights of its female. Well, the male energy is the outgoing energy. I called that power. And we're talking about the Tao here. So we're saying recognize its power or be aware of the power of the Tao. However, what we are to do is not try and be powerful. In fact, we don't have to try and be powerful because the Tao is powerful, right? What we are to do is observe the rights of the female, which is the receptive energy. So recognize its power, remain receptive, right? That's the action we take. We remain receptive, we remain open. And then the next line, serve the whole world, creek, or sometimes that's translated as river or ravine. Serve the whole world, creek. I said, and like a creek, nourish the world humbly. I'm here in La Vida today at the Fort Condos, and running alongside of the condos, we have, well, they call it a river. But if any of y'all have seen it, it looks more like a creek, except in the spring when it's rushing a little more, when the snow is melting off the mountains. But it just looks like a little creek, right? Just a gentle little creek. And a creek very quietly, very humbly nourishes everything around it. If you look around the area, you'll notice the majority of the trees grow right along the creek. You'll also notice that the creek attracts a lot of wildlife, right? The deer come to the creek, the bear come to the creek, the fox come to the creek, right? So it's a very quiet, but yet extremely nourishing way of being. The next line says, serve as the whole world creek, always virtue, no leave. I translated that as, if you serve the world like a creek, grace will never leave you. So let's talk about what this virtue is, the Chinese character. Some people might also translate that Chinese character as power. Remember the power that comes from the Tao? This Chinese character really represents the energy or force or spirit or power that comes from the Tao. It's, you could call it the manifestness, right? The manifesting energy that comes from the Tao. So what we are most aware of is that which is manifest. What we are least aware of is the Tao itself because it's so unmanifest. This power is somehow in between. We could recognize it or not recognize it. I chose to call that grace. I felt like grace was the closest concept we had in English of this power or this movement that comes from God, or the power or the movement that mysteriously comes from the Tao. I'm going to read the whole thing again and then we'll look at the last line. I want to put it all in context. Reading on the right side now, the English side. Recognize its power. Remain receptive. And like a creek, nourish the world humbly. If you serve the world like a creek, grace will never leave you. And then the last line back on the left is return, duplicate to baby. And I said, and you will return to the nature of the baby or of a baby, which is the nature before ego, right? Before any ideas of self. It's a pure, innocent, aware nature. So recognize the Tao has power, but our action is to remain receptive. We aren't trying to control things. We aren't trying to be the power. We just want to be open and receptive. And then, like a creek, through being receptive and being aware of the Tao's power, we nourish the world humbly. You could say the world is nourished through us. That might even be more accurate than saying we nourish the world. We aren't really doing anything, but being focused on remaining receptive. Recognize its power, remain receptive, and like a creek, nourish the world humbly. If you serve the world like a creek, grace or the power of the Tao will never leave you, and you will return to the nature of a baby, right? Um, it's also a very trusting nature, right? Very innocent, egoless, aware, trusting. And, we can't get there by trying to be the power, by trying to be the powerhouse, by trying to be the controller, by trying to figure everything out. It's moving in the opposite direction, the more feminine direction, the receptive direction, the open direction, and allowing the power of the Tao to do things through us or around us, that we can return back to that original nature. Let's move to the next paragraph. On the left, know it's white or pure, observed the rights of its black or secret. So we want to know, be aware of the white or the pure. A lot of people translated this white. I chose to translate it with the pure side, and so did some others. Observe the rights of its black or secret. Lots of people chose to translate this as black. I chose to go more towards the secret or the mystery of the Tao. So the way I translated this, recognize its purity, embrace its mystery. Embrace its mystery is our action. Just as our action, if you can call these actions, just as our action is to remain receptive, our action is to stay in the I don't know, to embrace the mystery of the Tao, not to try and conquer it with understanding. So we know the Tao is pure, but we don't have full understanding of the Tao. And we embrace that, not having understanding of the Tao. We embrace that. The next line, serve as the whole world pattern, and serve as a model for the world. So we are a model or an example for the world when we trust the purity of the Tao and embrace the mystery, embrace that we cannot understand it, that we cannot conquer it with our minds. Serve as the whole world pattern, always virtue, no error, right? Always virtue, no error. I said, if you serve as a model for the world, grace will always guide you. If we trust the purity of the Tao and we embrace its mystery, we are able to be guided by grace, by inner spiritual wisdom, by intuition, by spontaneity. We're able to be guided by it. It's hard to be guided when we think we know how things should be, when we think we know how things should work out. But if we trust the purity of the Tao and we embrace that it's mysterious and stay in that I don't know mind, we can be guided. And the last line, return duplicate to no extreme, and you will return to equanimity. Right? It's hard to have equanimity when I think I know how things should be. I'm striving to make things the way I want them to be. And I'm upset when they aren't the way I think they should be. There's no equanimity. But if I trust the purity of the Tao and embrace the mystery, the I don't knownness, then I can be in a place of equanimity. I can be centered. I can be trusting. So recognize its purity, embrace its mystery, and serve as a model for the world. If you serve as a model for the world, grace will always guide you because you are now guidable and you will return to equanimity. The next paragraph. Know its glory. Observe the rights of its disgrace or dishonor. So know its glory, I translated pretty much like that. Recognize its glory. Observe the rights of its disgrace or observe the rights of its dishonor. I translated that as abide meekly. In this case, glory and disgrace or glory and dishonor are opposites. If you think of glory, I mean, that seems like something big and fabulous, right? Glory, right? Big and fabulous. So what is the opposite of big and fabulous? Meek, quiet, humble. even maybe sometimes not noticed. So our action is not to try and be the grandiose, not to try and be big and noticed and thought well of. Our action is the opposite of that. We know that the Tao has the glory, but we are going to be the meek one, the quiet one, happy to work behind the scenes if that's how it turns out, happy to not be noticed if that's how it turns out. Recognize its glory, abide meekly. And then on the translation from the Chinese side, serve as the whole world valley. Well, valley can be interpreted in a couple of different ways. Sometimes the word valley means abundance because of what grows out of the valley. Sometimes the word valley represents emptiness, because the mountains and the hills look like somethingness, and the valley is more of an emptiness. Well, this time I translated it as emptiness, and we'll see why as we go through the rest of this paragraph. But I said, recognize its glory, abide meekly, and like a valley, serve the world from emptiness. Right? Again, this is the receptive and the I don't know together. Right? Receptive plus I don't know equals empty. Right? I'm just empty. Serve as the whole world valley, always virtue, therefore sufficient. Or the way I translated that is, if you serve the world like a valley, grace will always be sufficient. Now, remember, I said that valley could be interpreted as abundance, or it could be interpreted as emptiness. And I chose emptiness this time. And here's why. I'm not the one that's being abundant. The grace or the power of the Tao is what's being abundant. It's the glory, it's the abundance. I'm the emptiness. So recognize its glory, abide meekly, and like a valley, serve the world from emptiness. If you serve the world like a valley, grace will always be sufficient. It will be abundant. In my emptiness, I will always know what to do. I will always know what to say. I will always know where to be, right? The grace, the guidance will be abundant through my emptiness. Recognize its glory, abide meekly, and like a valley, serve the world from emptiness. If you serve the world like a valley, grace will always be sufficient, and you will return to simplicity. How could I be anything but simplicity if I'm emptiness? How could I be anything but simplicity in my emptiness? Next paragraph on the left side. Simple, break up, standard, serve as tool. Or the way I translated that, simplicity disrupts the conventional ways. The conventional ways being the way things are now, with people uh, wanting riches, with people coveting what others have, with people hoping to get more and avoiding less, right? The way that things are now, simplicity breaks that up. And why does simplicity break that up? Because as I live from simplicity in my simple, content joy, others notice that. And they're striving and they're trying to get, whether they're doing it through working hard or through thievery or through lying and deceit, doesn't matter. Through their trying to get, there's a stress that's always there, an agitation that's always there. And in my simplicity, that contentness is very attractive. And so as I live like a creek from emptiness as a model for the world, my simplicity starts leading others around me to question their conventional ways. Like a tool, it starts to break that up. So simplicity disrupts the conventional ways. The next line on the left, sage person use of standard serve as official long. So the sage makes simplicity the standard. And in this way, becomes an enduring leader. Therefore, big system, no cut, or the greater ways, the ways of the Tao, remain undiluted. So let me just read through this whole thing one more time, and then I'll give you your assignment, and then we'll go look at another translation. Talking about the Tao here. Recognize its power. Remain receptive. And like a creek, nourish the world humbly. If you serve the world like a creek, grace will never leave you, and you will return to the nature of a baby. Recognize its purity, embrace its mystery, and serve as a model for the world. If you serve as a model for the world, grace will always guide you, and you will return to equanimity. Recognize its glory, abide meekly, and like a valley, serve the world from emptiness. If you serve the world like a valley, grace will always be sufficient, and you will return to simplicity. Simplicity disrupts the conventional ways. Therefore, it serves as a tool. The sage makes simplicity the standard, and in this way becomes an enduring leader. Thus, the greater ways, or we could even say the great way, remains undiluted. So this is your assignment. Let me get a drink first. Good. This is your assignment. Of the first three paragraphs, pick one. You could pick the paragraph that starts, recognize its power and remain receptive. Or you could pick, recognize its purity, embrace its mystery. Or you could pick, recognize its glory and abide meekly. Pick one. Contemplate that one. See how you can then live it. For example, recognize its purity, embrace its mystery. If I'm recognizing that the Tao is pure, and I'm going to act that out with my I don't know-ness, being in the I don't know mind instead of thinking I'm always right and I know everything, then maybe the way I choose to live that is I choose to spend more time in trust, right? I can trust because of its purity. I don't need to know everything and figure everything out. Oh, look, I have a friend here on my Tao book. See that guy? Look at him. So uh, find whatever inner interpretation feels right to you. There isn't a right or wrong answer here. You will be guided from within on how to interpret and therefore how to live the paragraph that you choose. So pick one of those three paragraphs, contemplate it, and see what comes to you as how you can live that particular paragraph, right? Because remember, this book, look at this guy. This book is called Tao Te Ching, an interpretive guide to live by. So that's what we're looking for, right? Is how to live this. Now I'm going to very gently put you off of my book so that when I close my book, you are not, he wants to get back on the book. He loves this book. Okay. I don't want to squish him, right? I don't want to. So let's see. Can we get you to go over here? There you go. Okay. So I'm going to close my book now that I don't have a bug there to squish. And we're going to go look at another translation. of chapter 28. This translation is from John R. Mabry, PhD. Here we go. Know the active, the masculine, yet keep to the passive, the feminine, and you will cradle the world. If you lovingly hold the world, you will know eternal goodness and will become again as a little child. Be aware of the obvious, the light, but keep to the mysterious, the dark, and set an example for the world. Be an example for the world, and do not stray from your calling, and you will return to the eternal. Know honor, yet remain humble, and be empty of the world. Being empty of the world is good enough, and you will return to the simplicity of the uncarved block. If the block is carved, it is trapped in one form and critiqued. The sage prefers simplicity, and so is ahead of them all. He knows better than to divide the whole. So just another way that these Chinese characters were translated and interpreted. And I had many favorites. It was hard to pick one, but I didn't want to spend all day reading different translations to you. If you're interested, you can do that on your own. All right, so I'll let you go. Pick a paragraph, contemplate how you can live it, and practice living that paragraph. And I'll see you when I come back for chapter 29. Bye. I was going to let my friend say bye to you too, but I'm not sure where he has gone. So I'll say bye for him. All right. Bye.